I got a couple of questions actually. You know, I could ask this to either of you really. Like, I think honestly, there's some sort of seasonal variability with this coronavirus. I think, despite what the WHO says, I think this virus seems to be less transmissible during the summer season. So if there's a second wave, the second wave, this is just my wag, so I could be completely wrong. There's no scientific basis for what I'm going to say next. But I think if there's a second wave, it's going to come around October and November when the weather starts to get colder.
Yeah,
So, and
there's a good reason for why that happens with the flu, and that's because once the cold weather starts to set in, people's nasal passages, their sinuses, they start to get more fluid in them. Okay, and so then the viral particles they attack better when you breathe, and so you tend to absorb them into your system easier in wintertime than in the summertime because of the way your respiratory system works. So
yeah.
since the virus has so much similarity with flu virus, it's a reasonable expectation that that's going to happen. And then the other
And
one, go ahead.
I was just going to say the other basis why I look at this is like everyone thought Africa would be a shitstorm with this coronavirus, but it
It
hasn't really panned out that way.
it probably is, and we're just not getting the numbers because the African countries are so poor and have such poor health systems. They're not counting them. Okay,
No, but there is
they just
one thing. There is
they're,
one thing with Africa. Sorry to interject, but there is
mhm.
one thing with Africa. Is they're a very young continent. There's a lot of people under the age of 40, and like I don't know what it is like in America, but in UK, 99% of the deaths are people over the age of 40, and half
Right,
the population in Africa are under the age of 30 because of the everybody is just having kids sort of thing.
right.
So mm,
Yeah, that no doubt that's a huge aspect, huge part of it. You know, the aging populations that we have here in the United States and Europe. But what goes against that a little bit is the Japanese have one of the oldest populations around, and they're not getting hit that hard. So, and they do have facility or ability to count their numbers.
but then that goes back to the weather because Japan is close to the equator, relatively close. So I think that helped them.
Yeah, that's again, you know, there are so many factors involved here on the epidemiological level that are unknowns. You know, they're unknowns, uh, and you know, there's the fact that, like in Italy, some provinces were hit extremely hard. All right, we were talking with Ugo Bardi, and his province, almost nobody came down with it. Now, what the fuck's going on there? Why does his province they have some immunity or something? And then there was also what did I read? Oh, blood type. There's some indication that blood type may be a factor in whether you're susceptible to getting it or not, or whether you have some more resistance, if you will, to it, which is possible too. Okay, and then you know there's other ones that haven't been considered here at all, or at least talked about. One is nutrition. You know, what do you eat? You know, I decided that you know historically, garlic was sort of a cure-all for keeping away vampires and stuff like that. You know, in legend, but you know, legends have origins. And I said to myself, well, you know, vampires and all that, they're metaphors for illness and the plague and sickness and so forth. So I'm like, you know, these people may have been eating garlic to keep away diseases from themselves. And many medical benefits in modern times have been identified. And even on the vitamin shelves, you see garlic, garlic oil, and so forth in pills to take. Well, I decided to go to the source, and I eat like a head of garlic every day now. Okay, I take a whole head and I roast it, and then I eat it clove by clove. Okay, so you don't want to be near me when I'm breathing. Okay, and I don't know if it works. And I'm fortunate that I'm in a neighborhood that is very sparsely populated, and very few cases so far, relatively speaking. I think there's only one case, so one dead person in the Matsu Valley so far, and I think we have now 36 cases in the valley. So, yeah, Alaska numbers increased dramatically in the last couple of weeks, but they increased dramatically from a very low number. Okay, so the future, it's hard to say what the future will bring, and especially if cold weather, it does exacerbate the problem, because of course we get colder weather than just about anybody else. So maybe northern Minnesota and North Dakota, and so forth.
One question I'd ask for either of you, and that's the thing is, I don't think it really is relevant in Alaska, because honestly, I think the population density is so low. You should be able to do what New Zealand have done and just eradicate it from Alaska. If the governor is on point, they can eradicate it from Alaska. Well, honestly, that's what I think.
New Zealand has the advantage that there is not. We have a huge commutation from the lower 48, from the military that fly up and down here as they're posted to Alaska, and from the oil industry. Who a lot of the workers will fly from up here down to the Dakotas, okay, and then vice versa.
Yeah, but I think what I mean by on point is, like, in America they have good antibody tests. They can test people's antigen. So, like, if people travel from other states, they can test them. Like, they say, look, if you're traveling from out of the country, from the lower 49, we'll test you.
Right.
And if you've got it, then you can control it that way. So that's what I mean by, if you're on point, you can do these kind of things.
Yeah.
I think in Alaska, it's a very realistic prospect that they can get rid of everything.
Yeah,
but this is probably.
We'll see that. I think you will see people being screened before they can actually even get on the plane to Alaska. Especially if this continues for any more length of time. Travel will be limited and so forth. But again, New Zealand is its own country. Alaska is one state of this country. And that's a big difference on the legal level in terms of being able to travel and so forth. To go to New Zealand, you got to have a visa, all right? Americans don't need a visa to travel to Alaska. Okay, you don't even need a passport. Nowadays you need what they call a real ID, which is a sort of enhanced driver's license that goes into a big database. It's like a national ID now.
You don't need a driver's license. It needs to be more than a driver's license.
It is a little more than a driver's license now. It's called, like I said, a real ID. Do they have real ID driver's license in Norfolk or in Virginia? Sir?
I'm not sure. I suspect that. I just got mine renewed a couple years ago. I have what they got. I mean, it's got all manner of fraud proofing on it, so maybe it is.
You can look it up pretty easily. I'll look it up.
The main question.
Alaska was supposed to get theirs in. I think we did finally get it last year, but it's not required. You don't have to have your license changed to a real ID license, and it costs extra money. And I don't need it because I have a passport.
But one question, I'll direct this as Surly. What is the for your state, and just generally
And
speaking, what is the status of the track and trace? Do any states implement track and trace? You know,
I am not aware of that as being anything that anybody's talked about in Virginia. I'm not sure that anybody currently is implementing track and trace. Haven't you heard that America is done with the pandemic? Trump has turned the page. Happy days are here again. Woo fucking who. America may be done with the pandemic, but I guarantee you the pandemic is not done with America.
yeah,
I tend to agree with your assessment that we'll see a second wave in the fall months for the reasons that Ari outlined. I mean, they're just transmission is tougher for a virus for all the reasons in the summer months. Plus, there's a lot more in Virginia. We have a mandatory, if you're in public, wear a mask law, which is absolutely good. I suspect, Ari, parenthetically, one of the reasons Japan has had such good luck is because there's no cultural stigma attached to wearing a mask. And there's a whole lot more social conformity as opposed to here, where we have armed misfits, dressing up in their AR-15 cosplay and taking the public forums because they want to get a haircut and a tattoo.
yeah, and on the good side, I mean, those people will preferentially die off. Okay.
Yeah, I won't be here to see it, but perhaps Mazda will.
Yeah, yeah. But the one thing that we do have that they did not have in prior plagues is we do have a pretty advanced medical system, at least in the Western countries. And, if they fast track it and all the top scientists and medical researchers are on top of it, and the pharmaceutical companies who see big profits ahead of them for developing a good vaccine, they got all of those factors there that do speak to a vaccine coming available faster than the usual time. The usual time to develop a vaccine is about 10 years. Okay, it takes a long time. But I think if they fast track it, they might get one in 2 years. Okay, but it's going to be 2 very ugly years. All right, it's still very difficult to say what the final numbers will come in at. It was
well, nobody knows. But the thing is, if people observe the usual protocols for testing and grouping, it'll probably be 2 years. But if we've got cronies and insiders who need to get paid, and we have, I remember when Henry Kissinger on the eve of the 1972 election said, "Peace is at hand." We're going to have a vaccine at hand on the evening of November 2nd.
Yeah,
I announce a vaccine.
Trump will be there holding up a syringe. Okay.
Right. In a Bible, a syringe in one hand and a Bible in the other.
Bible in the other. Yeah, there you go.
In terms of the vaccine, though, and this is as far as I'm aware from what I've read on the vaccine, because they're making a kind of thing about it in the UK, is they're progressing with a vaccine in Oxford and are working with a company called AstraZeneca. It's actually the biggest company in the UK at the moment. They're the biggest company stock market wise. I think they're worth 110 billion. But basically, they're working with the United States. And do you know about the project Warp Drive?
Nope.
Yes. Well. Anyway, Trump is promoting this Warp Drive, and basically, in terms of this vaccine, they're on the 3rd stage of the clinical trial. So they've done phase 1 and phase 2 of human trials with this vaccine, And the third stage, they're apparently they're trying this vaccine out in Brazil because there's no hotspots in Europe anymore. You know, Britain isn't a good enough target for this, so they're sending the third part to Brazil and Africa. That's what I've heard anyway. And according to AstraZeneca, the company who's monitoring this vaccine, they said they should get an answer from this third stage by August. August is not that far away. And they're already producing this vaccine as we speak. They're producing the vaccine even though they don't know the results of the trials. They're just hoping the trials are successful. And
Right.
part of the deal with this thing is the first 400 million vaccines will be prioritized for the UK and the USA. Kind of going against the whole let's give this to the world type of thing. That's the deal, supposedly.
And I can assure you that, you know, it will go to, it'll cost like $5,000 a dose, and it will not be covered by health insurance, and we'll be distributing it to our friends. Oh, and by the way, if it makes anybody sick or somebody dies, the manufacturer will be fully, and I say fully, indemnified by
Right.
the power and majesty of the United States government.
You got that right. That's basically how it'll go. It's but you know, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out too. You know.